So, good morning, everyone. Welcome to our webinar, Foster Employee Engagement on SharePoint with Advanced Analytics, in cooperation with our partner Tryane. My name is Leonie Lawrence from we.CONECT Global Leaders, and I'm happy to welcome you all. And of course, our speaker, Nicolas Saliba, CEO and founder of Tryane, who will show us today how to measure the adoption of SharePoint and the impact on internal communication. So before we start with the presentation, there are just two organizational things I would like to mention. Firstly, should you have any questions during the presentation today, you can type them in your questions tab in the control panel, and we will take the time to answer them after the presentation in the Q&A session. And secondly, the webinar will also be recorded, and you will receive a link to this recording in the follow-up of today's webinar. And that was it from me for now, and I'm happy to hand over to Nicolas.
Hi everyone, I'm very happy to host that webinar. So the goal for me is to talk more about how you can foster employee engagement on SharePoint and how you can do that with advanced analytics. So just a few words about ourselves, Tryane. So we're a software vendor. We're doing only software, and our mission is to grow the ROI of your digital transformation. So we have analytics solution for a lot of different internal communication tools such as Yammer, SharePoint, Office 365, Skype for Business. And so on this presentation, I will really focus on SharePoint. But we're really helping our customer get the most of all this internal tool by providing an advanced analytics on everything they're using to communicate. We've been operating for 11 years. We have more than 1,500 companies on our SaaS platform that is measuring the performance of Office 365. And we are very tough on security and privacy. The data is hosted in France, and we are currently getting certified SOC 2 Type 2, which is a certification ensuring the highest standard of quality. I wanted to open this webinar. I wanted to talk about the business value of measuring. I think this pyramid is very important. I mean, that's the way we take things at Tryane. When you push a new tool such as SharePoint or any other tool in the enterprise, there are three levels of adoption from your users. The first one, it's what we call adoption. You need volume KPIs. You need to understand, okay, I just launched this tool. Do people connect? So what is the percentage of active user? How many pages do they view? So it's what we call volume KPIs. It's really the first level. But once they're connecting, you want to understand the usage. And you can have a very high adoption, but usage can be lacking. I'll take an example. We have customers that are using Yammer heavily. They have like 90% plus active users on Yammer, but it's mostly team building communities. So it's mostly to talk about personal interest, but not too much about business. And that brings me to the third level, which is really why in the first place enterprise are pushing these new tools. It's how once this platform is adopted and the users found a usage, how does that create value for the full organization? And then you're talking about real business challenge. Are you more efficient when you're collaborating? Do you have a better time to market? Do you break the silos of the organization? Do experts find the content they need? And so really, as an intro of this webinar, I wanted to talk about that pyramid because not all charts are equal, and it's really the ultimate goal is to put these new tools in place, have them used, but also create an impact so that your organization becomes more efficient. I took 4 use cases, and then I'll jump into the demo of what our solution can do. 4 use cases that we encounter very often with our customers. And actually, the first question I ask when I meet with a new customer or a new prospect is, what is your business case? Why did you put SharePoint? Why did you invest money and time to insert that tool into your organization? So that's the first challenge. Usually, there's an extensive investment, both in time and money, into the new digital workplace. And you need to show that it is used, and you need to boost adoption if it is not. And how our customers are doing that, it's to monitor the adoption, but by business unit, by location. The organization model is a key piece of our software. So it's good to know you have 50% of adoption. It's better to know that you have 0% of adoption in one particular business unit and 80% in another one. So then you can reach out to the inactive users and help them. So for example, they might need training, they might not even know it's existing, they might need mentoring, but then you can really focus your effort on the area of your organization that are not using the tool. And you can also identify your internal advocates, your top users that are using heavily the platform, and ask them how they're using the platform. And probably you can find some business case that you will be able to replicate elsewhere in the organization. So that's a really practical example on how you can boost the adoption, and the analytics allows you to target your effort. The second very common challenge is you want to improve your internal communication. So the internal communication team has a lot of new tools to communicate to the employees, but it's usually difficult to see if it's working. So they might be posting news and content on the intranet or on the digital workplace, and how can they show and grow their impact? So one example we take usually is that we give extensive content analytics for every news or page that they're posting. They can analyze the number of users that are viewing it, and they can analyze which type of message generated the biggest impact. They can also work on the message itself, on the type of message, and they can also analyze the user path to understand what brought these users to this news. For example, if the news is showcased at the top page of the intranet, of course it should bring more traffic. So these are really 2 very practical use cases. I have 2 other ones. Usually when you're a large organization, you have a lot of content piling up on SharePoint. And at some point you want to cut the clutter and get rid of that content. So we're able to identify inactive items, any item on SharePoint, page, document. So usually analytics solution, they're very good at tracking activity, but not so much to track inactivity. And so here you'll be able to track everything that's inactive, and you can also reach out to the admins of the sites where it's inactive to ask them what they want to do with it. Do we archive that content? Do we delete it? And then once you cut the clutter, it will become even more easier for your user to find the content they need. Which links me to the last common scenario that I want to talk about is how can you access content seamlessly? How can you make sure the users easily find and access the content they need? We have extensive search KPIs on SharePoint, and we can also get the path to access content. So you can, based on that, rearrange the layout, and you can also analyze the user journey and try to simplify it. I will just jump on the demo of our solution. It's called Tryane Analytics for SharePoint. So this is the GUI of our application. It's an HTML5 GUI with responsive design. So that means that it will display on any screen and any device. The way it works is that on the left, you get the menus of the application, the different page, and at the top you can you see the time period, and everything in the page displays according to that time period. So by default, we're looking at the weekly pace, and you can also switch to a monthly view or even to a daily view. Okay, so the first thing you want to know, I will switch to SharePoint because it's very easy to switch between one module to the other. So the first thing we want to know with SharePoint, it's the engagement. So like I said earlier with the first business case, you need to understand and analyze the adoption of the platform from your users. So in this example, we have roughly 1,000 licensed users on SharePoint, and we're looking at 80% of engaged users. So the way we're looking at engagement, for us, it's the percentage of members who connected at least once during the last 4 weeks on SharePoint. We analyze the activity of your users during the last 4 weeks, and we put them into one of the 4 below categories. It ranges from inactive. Anytime you want the definition, you just roll the mouse over the I. So inactive person has not connected once during the last 4 weeks. A viewer connected to view content but did not engage in the conversation, and then engaged and very engaged users have been doing contribution on the platform. Contribution could be a message, uploading a document, anything that you can see. So these categories are in percentage of your organization, and then it translates in number below in the donut. You can see the evolution over time, week by week. But most importantly, it's very important to know where it's happening in your organization. So here we're looking at the engagement of any type. So we're padding up the engaged users, but I can focus on the inactive users. And I will show you right after how we can easily model an organization matching your org chart. But for example, here I'm looking at the function. If I switch to the department, the global KPI stayed the same. I still have 80% of engagement, but I can find where it's happening in the organization, and I can filter on inactive users, and I see that 26% of the communication department is inactive, and I can see that it's about 37 users, and it's ranked number 1 inactive department, both in percentage on the left and in number on the right. So this way I can really target my communication to the different departments that are not using it and try to understand why. On the other side, I can also look at where are my very engaged users, where are my top players, and I can reach out to these people and say, hey, sales seem to be using SharePoint heavily, so do you have a specific business case that we could replicate elsewhere? It seems very interesting. So, and all these organizations are multi-level, and you can go directly to a specific population that's interesting for you, and get the numbers for any population that you like. For example, in the zone, country, city organization, if I see that Europe is the most engaged, I can focus in Europe. Then it will compare the countries of Europe. Then I see UK is engaged, and then there will be English cities benchmark. So you might wonder, how can you get that data? How can you model my organization? So it's very easy. The way we do it is we're going to connect to 3 different data sources. First, we're going to connect to the SharePoint user profile. So the profile of your user in SharePoint. We're able to retrieve any attribute from their profile, even custom attributes. So we can base our organization model based on that. Another data source is Office 365 AD. So it's what Microsoft called also Azure AD. So in that repository, we're able to fetch these 6 properties: city, company name, country, and so forth. If both data sources are not really used, or if you're running SharePoint on-prem, it's also possible to import your own custom property. For example, you can export your HR repository or anywhere, any repository where your employees' data is sitting. And the only thing we'll be needing is the email that the user is using to connect to SharePoint, and then each column will be an attribute. And you can manually import that, but of course you can automate that. So for example, once you have the right data, you can automate the import every week, so it's always up to date. And once you have all these data sources in place, you see here, if I create an organization, I will have all these attributes here that are listed, and I can see that the city attribute is matching all my users, so it looks good, but the company name is matching less, so it might not be very relevant. Sorry. And here I can create the organization I want, for example, country and city, and you see it's multi-level. And if I go to next step, I'm comparing at the first level the countries, but then if I'm focusing on France, then I'm comparing the French cities. And I can go, and the next step, I will give it a name, and then it'll create the organization that will be available the next day. So this is really powerful, and you can create as many organization models as you want. And if I go back to the engagement page, you see here that I can very easily switch between the organizations that are in place. So here I can compare the function, and in one click I can switch to the department. And then I can, of course, drill down in the organization model. It's very important, I insist a little bit, because it's key to and you're gonna have some organization model everywhere. And also it's a very big key selling points compared to web analytics solution that have been designed for the web. We designed this specifically for SharePoint and for your users that are authenticated, so it's easy to find them. The adoption, it's if you want to go deeper, we have the percentage of unique user by week, the number of unique monthly active user, unique daily active users, and the stickiness is the percentage of people who are coming back. And we can analyze that. We can also analyze if the people are connecting to contribute or to view. So in this example, it's mostly to contribute. And finally, we can find where in your organization you have the most active users or monthly active users and so forth. So with engagement and adoption, you have a very good view of who's adapting the software and who's not, and you have the means to connect to these people so that the inactive users get on board and find some business case. But what's really important on SharePoint, it's everything that has to do with sites, pages, documents, and so forth. So here in this filter, it's very important to understand that you can look, analyze the level you want. Here I'm looking at all site collections, meaning that I'm looking at the whole tenant, the whole SharePoint form. But I can filter by site collection, and I can also create an aggregation of site collection. So for example, I can filter, I can create a view for all the site collection of marketing, and then all the KPIs will be matching this selection. So the overview, we have more than 1,000 SharePoint sites on this example. These are the types used. So we have all the common SharePoint types, number of hits over time. We're able to tell you these hits have been generated by how many unique visitors, how many unique contributors, see the evolution over time. We retrieve the organization model I just showed you. So where are my visitors and contributors coming from? So it's really important to understand that. and then where are my top sites, either by number of visitors or by number of contributors. The access is how many sessions do we have on this on the platform, what are the sites where my people are spending the most time, and how do they access my SharePoint. Are they using a desktop, a tablet, a phone? And for each type of access, we'll tell you the browser or the operating system, the number of hits it represents. Active sites, it's very important to understand what are your most active sites and what are your most inactive sites. We have some exports here, so we're able to export this list of inactive sites, and you can reach out to the admin of the site to say it's been inactive for almost a year, so what are we doing with your site? Do we delete it? Do we archive it? Orphan sites, there are sites without an admin, so it's also useful. Top items, they're the top items of what I'm looking at. So right now I'm looking at the whole farm, but if I'm filtering here, I will have the top items of that site collection. And for each item, you see here I have tabs, top pages, top documents, top pictures, and so forth. So for each of these items, I can see precisely the activity. And so I can see the views, the number of views since the beginning, the number of viewers, and can even see the list of viewers. So exactly who has seen a page or a document, and where it's in which population these people belong in the organization, and the same for contribution. If you don't want, because some of our customers don't want to show any PII, personally identifiable information, such as the name or the picture, we have a data privacy option that will hide any PII from the GUI. So it's also possible. But we're never tracking the activity of an individual. We're tracking the activity of a content to understand which individual has seen it. It's a little different, but if you're unions or if you're not comfortable with that, we can hide that. So this is for the admin, I would say. But then what's really interesting is that you can drill down at the site level. And here, it's very easy to delegate the access to your SharePoint site manager. So everybody has access to the right KPI. The admin can see everything, but you can also delegate access, and we are going to mirror the SharePoint permission level. And here we're going to bring you all the permission level that we find in SharePoint. And you can say it's full control or it's a custom role, and we will look for every individual that has this permission on SharePoint, and we will grant him site manager access. So this person will be able to connect to his site, but only that. So if I was the site manager of this site, I will land directly to that page, but I will not have the menu on the left. So it's really, for a large organization, it's really a key feature because it's always up to date. It's always mirroring permission of SharePoint. You don't have to worry to grant access to that person or that person. It's all automatic and all secure. So this is what we can get at the site level. It's a little bit similar to what I showed you at the farm level. This site is called Project Education. This is the URL in SharePoint. It's a project type. It's been created in March. It's been monitored since March. So you have the audience here, number of hits, number of unique visitor contributors. You retrieve where do these visitors and contributors come from. And if I switch here, I can I can switch to a different view. You see here I have the department. I can want to see the zone here. The user path, it's what I talked about earlier. It's how did this user land to my site. So you have the number of session, number of duration, the duration of the session, number of hit per session, but most importantly, you get the source. Where the user is coming from, the same site collection, from another site collection, externally to SharePoint, from SharePoint search, or a direct link, like they bookmark the page or they click to the link in an email. So, and for each category, you see like same-site collection is 35.7, more than 37% of the traffic. We'll tell you the sites that brought the most traffic and the number of sessions it represents. And you can also go all the way to the page that brought the traffic. So with that, you can really analyze precisely where your traffic is coming from. And in the example I just showed, if you put the news in the home page, did that bring a lot of traffic, or what was the effect of that? That's really interesting. We retrieve the access piece that I just showed you. So, but for that particular site, how did the user access the site? We have a scoring of influence. That means that we try to score the impact of your users, meaning that we try to score the impact they have on their peers. If their post or their content is shared by others, it will bring them more points, more influence points than if it's just like, which will give them more points than if it's just viewed. So the most engagement they trigger from their audience, the most point of influence they get. We have a reporting about hashtag to understand, which hashtags are used within that site. Of course, we've got the activity, so it's like volume KPIs around all the type of libraries that are used. We retrieve the top items, but you see there are a lot less items because here I'm at the site level and I can switch between page, document, and picture. And here I can query my own items for that site. One thing I didn't show you is that you can switch very easily. You can find a site very easily and switch to it like that. So you can have this reporting at the farm level, at site collection level, and of course at the site level, and you can delegate the access to the site admin. For the content page, this is a page that allows you to query extensively either active content or inactive content. For example, here we have shortcuts. Give me all the pages without activity during the last 90 days, or the documents without activity during the last 90 days. And it will search the documents matching your query on all site collection, and it will display you the list. And you can also export that list as a CSV. You'll have the URL of the document, the site to which it belongs, and also the email of the people managing the site. So you can reach out to them and tell them, what do we do with that dead content? Is it normal that nobody is using it? Can we archive it, and so forth? And these are preset queries, but you can do the query you want. So you see here, it's filtered on the type document, but I could filter on page. It's on outside collection, but I could filter on the specific site collection. I could even filter on a specific site if I want, and I can query either the items without activity or the items with activity. And I even have advanced filter because I can also go all the way to the SharePoint library, and I can, play with these properties such as creation, update, and deletion dates. And once I have my query, I can search if it matches. Yes, it matches some pages, and I can serve this search. So this is what it is, but I can just name it the way I want, save my changes, and then this query will display here. So I can always get back to that. And usually after I have reached out to my site admins to tell them that their content is dead, I can go regularly to see what they have been doing with it. Is it clearing? Is it cutting the clutter, or do I need to reach out to them again? So this is very powerful. And again, what you need to remember is you can query activity as well as inactivity, which is quite unique. And you can query it the way you want and on the scope you want of SharePoint. make it more efficient. We have some reporting around hashtags also, if you are using hashtag in your discussion within SharePoint. So we can tell you what are the top hashtags, and for every hashtag we can tell you what other hashtags are usually associated with it, related hashtag, in which SharePoint sites this hashtag office graph is used, and who are the top influential users of that hashtag. The activity, it's the activity on the whole platform. So of course, the activity around page, document, discussion, whatever SharePoint item you're using. You can filter by type of activity, and you can also filter by population. So it's always matching what you wanted to see. Earlier, before I jump into the demo, I talked about how you can analyze the user journey and make SharePoint more efficient. So we have extensive KPIs around search. You see that we have 3 categories of search: successful queries, abandoned queries, and queries without results. So we're able to tell you which queries. So a successful query is a query that resulted on a click. So the user searched something in SharePoint and then they clicked on the link. Abandoned queries, the user searched something on SharePoint, there were results, but the user did not click on it. And queries without results, of course, it's self-explanatory. So it's really interesting to analyze what your users are searching. You can also focus on the queries made from a search center or on a site level. So you can really focus on, for example, the queries made on a specific site to understand, what are the users searching there. And to analyze that, it's usually items or content that they cannot find easily. So it's really interesting to analyze that in depth and to make it more actionable for them to find the content they need. You can do that at the site level, at the farm level, and then you can, of course, enhance the user journey. User profile, it's to analyze if your users filled in their profiles correctly. Did they put a picture? Did they fill in their skills or their interest? Is there a department linked to it, and so forth? And again, the organization is key to help communicate to the employees. If I focus the department, I can see that 30% of the sales, 36% of the salespeople did not put a photo, 32% of HR. So it really helps you, same as the adoption, it helps you to target the communication on this page so that your user fill in their profile, and for the engagement so that they understand why they connect or why they don't connect. And the last thing I want to show you is the My Dashboard. It's very easy to customize the application. So for example, on every widget within the application, you can add the widget to My Dashboard. You have different dashboard, personal dashboard and public dashboard. So I'll create one for the webinar. And I added the percentage of profile pictures. I will add another one like that and another one like that. I will also add something around the engagement. And I'm currently building my page. Something around most active sites, for example. And something around the content of that site. Okay, let's say the user path. So within a few clicks, if I go to this webinar page, you see I retrieve all the widgets that I just showed you. And I can rearrange it. For example, if I find that it's not pretty enough, I can design it, and I can rearrange it. Try to put that here. Just drag and drop. There you go. So I rearrange it the way I want. And what's really interesting also with that is that I can broadcast it. And I can have as many pages, as many My Dashboards as I want. Why would I want to do that? Because I want to communicate different information to my team, to my management, and to my peers, or to a specific project. So that page here, if I broadcast it, I can choose the periodicity to notify. So do I notify these people weekly or monthly? So let's choose monthly. If I'm looking for someone within my organization, I can very easily choose that person, but I can also notify people just by email. And that's also working with mailing lists. And so I don't know if you have some kind of if you want to notify your CEO, or if you want to notify a specific group or specific mailing list, it's very easy to do. And you can really differentiate the information you're sending and the people you're sending it to. So it's really a powerful feature that we just released. And yeah, it's something I didn't mention, but we're releasing new features every 2 weeks. And I think this is what I wanted to show you on our software. I wanted also to try to make it as actionable and as close to the use case our customers are targeting. So this is it for the demo. I wanted to show you that we're working already with a lot of big corporations that are trying to make an impact, either on Office 365 or on SharePoint on-prem. And I think I will have it for some question. You have my information here, so do not hesitate to reach out if you recognize yourself into one of the use cases I mentioned, or if you just want to have a deep dive into some things I didn't cover. And if you have any question, I'll be very happy to answer it.
Thank you so much for the presentation. We do already have some questions in at the moment, but to all the attendees, please make use of the time that we still have left. If there are any questions open, you still have time to type them in now. But I think we can get started. There are some more general and some very specific to the setup of the tool. So let's start with the broader questions, and maybe you can tell us, how would you position this solution against something like Adobe Analytics? What sets it apart?
Like I said earlier, we made that solution specifically for SharePoint. So Adobe Analytics or Google Analytics, from my understanding, are mostly a web analytics solution. So it's true that SharePoint is some kind of web portal, but the real differentiation is that everything has been made for SharePoint. It's very easy to navigate, to filter by site collection, to delegate access to users, mirroring their SharePoint permission, and also the organization piece, the organization model. I spent some time talking about that. It's very important. It's very easy to, you're talking about authenticated users, so it's more important to know who is connecting to the platform, and or at least which population. And so it's very easy to set up and very easy to cross with the KPIs we're showing. So that would be one of the main differences. And if I just take a quick example, for the people who are using Office 365, Microsoft released, they used to have a classic experience for SharePoint sites, and they launched a modern UI experience, which is basically a lot of JavaScript, and when the page loads, it loads a lot of different pieces, a little bit all at the same time. I know that I'm not sure for Adobe, but I know that for Google Analytics, it's almost impossible to track the page. So we're tapping information not only from the JavaScript, but also from all the APIs that Microsoft is giving us. And so that's a lot more data that I don't think this solution would capture.
And is your solution available both online and on-premise?
Yes, it's a good question. Yes, we have only one roadmap, so it's the same application, but it's made so that we can do an on-premise version of at any time. So the cool thing about that is that our on-premise customer benefit from the latest features that we develop on the SaaS platform, and they just have to update the application. But they can definitely install it on premise, which means it will be on a server within their premises, and we try to make it as simple as possible. We have a Windows installer.
Thank you. Then I guess we can skip to the next question. You basically just touched on that in your last sentence. So, is it easy to install, and what is the process of installing the solution?
Yes. So if it's SharePoint Online, we're in the Microsoft App Source. So you just go to the App Source Marketplace. You look for Tryane Analytics for SharePoint, and you just click on the install button, provided that you have the sufficient rights on the tenant. And for the on-prem version, we have a Windows installer. So we have a dedicated website where you will download all the binaries, the documentation, technical documentation, and you can either install it yourself or we can help you install it. But it's usually pretty straightforward.
And there's one question that I think is very important to people right now at the moment is the GDPR compliance. Can you talk about that? Is the solution compliant?
Yes, of course. Yes, I can talk about that. Yes, actually, we've been GDPR compliant from the start, because I'm not sure. I mean, there's been a lot of noise around GDPR, but I'm not sure everybody understands. GDPR doesn't mean that you cannot do any statistics around individual. It means that you need to inform the people that you're doing statistics about their usage and why you're doing it. And so we have GDPR processes in place, meaning that if a user wants to be excluded from the scope of analysis, it's possible. We can edit his data, we can delete his data, we can do everything that's asked by GDPR. And again, we can enable the data privacy option that I talked about during the demo, which means that it will hide any PII in the application. The other thing I want to mention is that we don't store anything related to content, or we store the minimum information that we need in the application. So we will store, for example, the ID of a message, the ID of a user, the ID of a document. We try to store the smallest amount of information in the database, and it's all encrypted.
Good, thank you for following up on that. The next questions are about the implementation there. One attendee would like to know, have you implemented it in financial institutions?
Yes. Yes, we have a lot of customer in different financial institutions, such as insurers, but we have, since the digital transformation, it's a global topic. Our customers are within every industry. We don't have a specific vertical. We have customers in the healthcare business, in the financial business, in service business. I mean, it's really a lot of different institutions have SharePoint, and yes, we have some financial customers that we can have you talk to if you want.
Okay, then we have a few things that are more technical, so more about the live demo. Can you say something about how you collect the data and where the data is coming from?
Sure. So I surfaced the topic a little bit when I compared to Adobe, but basically we have different ways of collecting the data. And the first way is to use what Microsoft is calling a user custom action. It's just an add-on that you can add to SharePoint. It's the standard way to add JavaScript to the master page, and with that JavaScript, like Google Analytics or Adobe, we would track the browsing of the users and what's going on the user side. But we'll also tap into the SharePoint web service and APIs. Especially, I mean, there are a bit more APIs online, like the management activity API. And so we try to tap as much data source as we can. But we have a technical document that I can send to anyone that's interested about which API we're using, which data we're storing, where everything that has to do about the technical functioning of the tool, as well as the data and confidentiality. So it kind of reaches my limits in terms of what I'm not very technical, but we have all the documentation, and I can send it to whoever is interested to deep dive.
Okay, thank you. And would it be possible to broadcast a dashboard to a particular SharePoint page live?
When we use the term broadcast, I think it's not broadcast in the sense that I see that question. We use broadcast to have the ability to send that information by email. So basically, it's to broadcast the information, but it's not like a broadcast, like a video live broadcast. It's more like I created my own page, and I want to send that information over to my team or to my management, and I don't want to create an account for them in Tryane. I just want it to be seamless for them. So I'll just send that information. I mean, Tryane will send that information automatically by email every week or every month. That's what we call broadcast. So, and I'm not sure I understand this question correctly, but from what I understand, it's more like broadcasting a dashboard on the SharePoint page live would be like broadcasting the information on a SharePoint page. So the dashboard broadcasting feature, it's mostly to send to notify the user every week or every month about the information I gather for them, not really to broadcast to a particular SharePoint page live. That being said, in the roadmap, we have the goal to create an API. So when that API will be in place later down this year, you'll be able to use any KPI in your organization within whatever you want. It could be probably a SharePoint page live too, but at the moment it doesn't exist. So it just brings the topic to my mind.
Okay. And one last question, sort of technical question, I think. How can we extract a usage report for a particular subsite within a site collection?
Yeah, it's something I try to show. You can extract usage report, or it depends what you mean by user report. It would be good to ask the person, but you can go at the level you want within SharePoint. So you can focus on a subsite or a site collection, or even the full form. So any report is available at at any level. So, I mean, how it's the way I showed during the demo. So you can either create your own page and broadcast it, or you can just filter the page at the level you want to see. It will mirror exactly the SharePoint structure.
Okay, thank you. So there was a question that just popped in just now. So is it possible to use a demo version implemented on a company tenant? Or would it have to be the full?
No, it's, I mean, from what I understand from the question, it's most of the customers try it on their tenant. So the demo version is the full version. It's just that you get to try it for 2 weeks or 3 weeks to first check that it's installing as smoothly as I'm telling you it is. And second, that it's providing the KPIs on your infrastructure that you're looking for. So it's really with large organization, it's always the case. We always do some kind of test or proof of concept or whatever you call it, because most of the customers want to see the KPIs on their own tenant before purchasing, and just reassure themselves that it's going to work technically and that they're not buying for something that's not working. So it's very common, and we're very used to that. Actually, when you launch a trial online, it's automatic. Like it's literally a few clicks, and you get 15 days to test it, and everything is automated. On premise, it's a bit longer because you need to find a server on which to install the application and maybe a technical call or something like that. So, but yes, it's definitely possible to do it's not like a demo version. It's like you will try the full version for a limited amount of time.
Okay, good. And does it support only certain versions of SharePoint?
It's a great question. So online, obviously, it supports online. For on-premise, it supports 2013 and above. So we would not support 2010, but it's become very rare nowadays. So we support 2013, 2016, and 2019.
Okay, good. As of now, I believe that was the last question. So thank you again for your presentation and for taking the time to answer all these questions for us. And thank you as well to our audience for tuning in today. If there are any more questions that come to you later, you're happy to send them either directly to the address you can see here to Nicola, or of course to me, Leonie Lawrence at we.CONECT, and I will be happy to pass it on. So I think we're at the end of our webinar now. I wish you all a lovely day, and I will be happy to welcome you again at one of our next webinars. So see you again soon. Bye-bye.
Thank you, everyone. Bye-bye.